Four Browns that are on the roster bubble before the preseason finale. Michael Woods is number one. Khalif Halassi. So Michael Woods. And again, we know that wide receivers are going to be Cooper Jeudy, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman. Woods has been a guy that's kind of fought through injuries. They keep bringing him back, keeps flashing. So he's got to keep an eye on. Khalif Halassi, cornerback, number two. And again, they have really good corners. You go Emerson, Newsome, Denzel Ward. Those guys are as good as anyone. Miles Harden can play in the slot. Halassi, when they've played him, has been good. He's shown up on special teams when given the opportunity. The question is, if Newsome is unable to go, does that open up a spot for Halassi to stay? Again, they have depth. But Halassi is a guy that I think can play in the league. It'll be interesting to see. Siaki Ika, this is another one that's he has not looked great in the first two preseason games. He's looked kind of rough. I don't want to be negative, but he hadn't looked like he's worthy of being a third-round pick. Run defense hasn't been what it was supposed to be. Hasn't been able to anchor and stop people. Really hasn't developed the pass rushing moves that you would hope he would. So Ika is a guy that I don't know if there's a way that he can find his way onto the final 53 or even the practice squad. He might be a guy that they move on from. That defensive line room, especially defensive tackles, is extremely deep. Fourth one here is Nyheim Hines. And Hines, he might be on the PUP list. I don't think there's I think when he is healthy, he becomes your pass receiving threat. He is a guy who has made his stock in the NFL. He has proven to be an NFL player. Has returned a couple of kickoffs for touchdowns, and he's a really good. He might be one of the better receiving running backs. Question is he healthy? He's coming off the knee injury similar to the ACL, and hadn't been able to get back on the field. Again, he's a guy much like Jedrick Wills. I think they expected him to be back sooner. Let's welcome in Spencer German, 92.3 The Fan, as well as Cleveland Browns on SI. Spencer, we're going through the bubble guys that you had in your article: Woods, Halassi, Ika, and Hines. Hines is a guy that I think they find a way to keep him, just because I think he has an elite skill in kickoff and also pass receiving.
Yeah, and I do think when push comes to shove, he probably does make the roster, or at least starts the season similarly to maybe Nick Chubb on that PUP list, and then gets activated 4 weeks in, something like that. And what's interesting, today, I think that him as a bubble guy kind of took a turn because Pierre Strong left practice with a rib injury of some sort, was put in an ambulance and taken off off of the premises. So the reason I kind of talked about or wrote about Nyheim Hines in that article or mentioned him was because I thought Pierre Strong's had such a good camp, and he kind of does a lot of the stuff that Hines is expected to kind of do for this team. But I do think, and as I kind of said in the first sentence on him specifically, I think ultimately he makes the team, especially if this Pierre Strong injury is serious. He's obviously a great kick returner. Bubba Ventrone has talked a lot about that. But it has been kind of interesting, to your point, that he said back in May, I went back and looked this up. He said back in May when he talked that he was trending towards, or that the plan was that he'd be ready by the start of training camp, or August 1st, I think was kind of the timeline he put on it. And as it turned out, he still has yet to practice. So you just never know with those guys who haven't practiced with the team throughout all of training camp if they're going to be ready or not.
Halassi's a guy, if he's not on the final 53, and again, Newsome injury may open a spot for him, I don't think there's any way he makes it to practice squad. I think the Browns kind of plucked him off the Chiefs practice squad last year, and I think he's shown enough. He's an NFL cornerback.
Agreed. Yeah, and I thought today, he's since Denzel Ward's been out for a little over a week now, with what Kevin Stefanski confirmed today was a concussion. He's been that first guy up, sort of filling in for Ward since then. So yeah, I think he seems like he's pretty much a lock at this point, just given what we've seen, and we'll see if anything changes with the last preseason game. But I think he probably makes it, to your point, like probably not a guy that you can get to the practice squad. I think Miles Harden, the seventh round rookie that they drafted, is a guy that's on that in this conversation as well, because he's had a really strong camp. And the other part of this too is, what do things look like with Greg Newsome? We saw him doing some stuff off to the side today and kind of going through some footwork stuff, and that was interesting because if he's ready to go, maybe he's part of the 53 rather than having to start on either the pup list or the IR and designated for return. And Kevin Stefanski did say at the start of camp that there's a chance both him and Dalvin Tomlinson are ready to go for the start of the season. So yeah, that cornerback room though, super super deep group, and there's been a lot of standouts I think throughout camp in the preseason. So those are some tough decisions to make, but I think Halasi has safely cemented himself on that list now.
Yeah, that if you're looking for an area where they potentially could trade guys, that I would point to that and the D
Yeah.
tackle room too as well.